Kitco News coverage of Freedom Fest is brought to you by Coin Payments, crypto payments made easy.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here at Freedom Fest 2022. It's a pleasure to be back. I had the honor of joining all of you in South Dakota last year, and I moderated a panel, many of the same people, that sounded the alarm that the US was on the brink of an energy crisis. And my panel quite correctly pointed out that given the Biden administration's aggressive push to end all fossil fuels and its hostile policies towards oil and gas, that this could only lead to a rise in oil and energy prices that would be detrimental to the US consumer and the US economy. And we pointed out how Biden's first moves in office were to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline, rejoin the Paris Agreement, ban new oil and gas leasing on public lands, stop the sales of several drilling areas in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico, and create a regulatory labyrinth that would disincentivize investment in the sector. And my panel quite rightly pointed out that this could only cripple the sector and hurt American energy independence. I'm getting all choked up about that. It's such a bad prospect, and they turned out to be right. Now, as we know, last July, oil was at around $65 a barrel. Now it's hovering near $100 a barrel. And the national average for gasoline was around $3.15. Now it's around $4.66. So is $10 gasoline on the horizon? What does America's energy landscape look like? What should it look like? And what can you do about it? Well, we have our esteemed panelists back to dissect all of that and more. So let me welcome them. We've got John Engel, the COO of Gulf Coast Western, which specializes in the exploration, development, and acquisition of domestic oil and gas. Ron Filer, the COO of Hornet Corporation, one of the fastest growing Tennessee oil production and gas companies. Scott Melbye, he's the Executive Vice President of the Uranium Energy Corporation, a 38-year veteran of the nuclear energy industry, and also serves as the President, CEO, and Director of Uranium Royalty Corp. And new to this panel this year is Reed Cagle, founder of Lapetco, an industry group made up of oil and gas producers. And Reed has over 35 years of experience in the energy sector. So, good to have you back, and welcome to Reed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, John, don't you just hate being right?
In this case, yes.
Yeah, in this case, I'm sure you do. And last year you pointed out, John, as I said, that the Biden administration policies were very detrimental to the sector at large, and how Biden campaigned saying he will end all fossil fuels. Now we have the Biden administration claiming that it's doing all it can to increase production. So why don't you start off by giving us an overview of what the oil and gas sector looks like now, a year later?
Well, thank you. It's interesting that the administration on the day one said we're going to put this business out of business. We're going green. Now that they realize what they've created, they're acting like they haven't done anything. But all of his comments, everything the guy does is to hinder investment in oil and gas, and hinder investment in refineries, and hinder investment in your natural gas and your coal-fired plants. But that's what he's doing behind the scenes. But on the front end, he's saying, we've got permits available. Well, it doesn't work that way. The investment, if you own a refinery and you're told we're going to put you out of business, how much are you going to invest in increasing your infrastructure and your bandwidth, if you will, on getting more product to market when at every turn they are trying to hinder your business? They are saying they're good on the front end, but they're working against you on the back end.
Well, Reed, we currently have Biden in Saudi Arabia begging the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to increase oil production, the same guy that he referred to as a pariah not too long ago. He's begging OPEC to increase production. Wouldn't the US be able to fill up the shortfall if the government would just reduce regulations? Can't we bring production successfully back home?
Absolutely. If you look in 2019, we were net exporters of oil. and there were approximately 1,100 drilling rigs operating in the United States. You look today, it's about 750. And in order to keep our production up in the U.S., you have to continue drilling. So we're about 350 rigs short. We have those rigs available. One of the struggles, obviously, is the manpower to staff those rigs and put them back to work. But there's plenty of opportunity if you look at the Permian Basin, which produces about 40% of the oil that comes out of the United States.
So, Reed, could the U.S. make up the shortfall that we're seeing from the Russian oil sanctions?
No question about it.
Right. But it comes down to investment, Ron, and you were saying last year that because of all the regulatory hurdles and the uncertainty regarding the sector when you have such hostile policies, that it was disincentivizing investment. So give us an overview of what things look like now. Has there been increased investment? Has there been a bit of a wake-up call?
Absolutely. So I think right now is one of the greatest times. I think as far as investors are concerned, is a excellent opportunity. And what it does for the investor, it's not just for the next month, the next 6 months. I'm talking years to come as far as an investor getting involved, making a change, making a difference where we can get back to energy independence. Because at the end of the day, it's supply and demand. And so the nice thing about what we're doing, everyone up here on the panel, no matter who you talk to, will tell you that that's what we need to do. We have to get back working, drilling, and there's certain things we control and there's certain things we can't control. I can't control the price of gas, no matter where it goes to. Same like I can't control what a bottle of water costs here. You know, it's expensive, I get that. But what we can control is where our dollars go and where we invest them, that we can make a difference in the United States and become energy dependent again. And a lot of this stuff will disappear because we are capable of doing what Reed just said, where we become energy independent again.
Well, Reed, to the point of the session, which is the prospect of $10 a gallon of gas, if there isn't increased investment, how likely is that scenario?
No, I think that prospect is there, but again, we have the capability to produce what we need, here, if the regulations would just relax. But, we're not seeing that. If you look recently, the EPA came out and said for the Permian Basin, they're looking at applying to a big part of it a non-attainment status under their regulations, their carbon regulations, or ozone regulations, and that. You talk about reducing the rigs that are drilling, that would bring them down substantially. And again, if we're not drilling, like Ron was saying, we can't reach that independence level again.
Right. Scott, we're going to get to you. He's our uranium guy, but we're going to get to you in a second. But John, I do want to focus a little bit more on this idea of ESG and that narrative, which of course is where nuclear energy comes in, and we'll get to Scott. But instead of going to countries like Venezuela, where the Biden administration is having discussions reportedly of releasing sanctions, and going to OPEC producers, if the concern is about environmental damage, and if it is about climate change for the planet at large, wouldn't it make more sense to bring that production back home, where domestic oil and gas companies do a much more diligent job of creating clean energy?
Absolutely. For everyone that doesn't know, ESG stands for environmental, sociological, and corporate governance. And yes, Biden is reaching out to Saudi Arabia. He's reaching out to Venezuela. Their oil, number one, is not as good as our oil. Our oil is much easier to refine. Do you really think that in the U.S., if you've been to a production facility in the United States, they are pristine. We don't like surface damages. We keep everything self-contained. They have remote sensing. They have eyes on to make sure there's no leaks every single day. Just the personnel, the manpower is staggering to make sure that our facilities run efficiently and cleanly. I guarantee you, if you go to Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or Iraq or Iran or Russia, look what Russia's doing. You think they care about the environment with what they're doing in Ukraine to the populace there? No. Venezuela, same thing. And you're going to have to put all of that oil onto fleets of, there's 812, to my knowledge, oil tankers traveling the globe at any given time, and they burn 61,000 gallons of fuel on average per day. You think that's better than running it through a clean pipeline? Nope. So I think this ESG, if ESG is going to be a detriment to all societies that coddle it, your Blackstones, your Larry Finks who push this agenda. It is not going to be good for any of us. It is the reason you see all this woke ideology in all of these corporations. It's the reason you look at Exxon and they're more worried about their environmental outlook so that their Blackstone still invests in them rather than look at how much oil we produce and how efficiently we produce it.
Well, you know, Peter Thiel says ESG is like the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, and that it's really a way to have an ideology that controls people. But ESG has been a pretty good thing for nuclear energy, Scott, because there has been this push for clean energy, and nuclear energy is a very clean source of energy and is enjoying bipartisan support now. But it's also being impacted by the war in Ukraine because Russia actually has a big role in uranium production and refinement. So break that down for us.
Sure. Well, it's not surprising that nuclear energy is seeing an enormous resurgence right now. It may be partially due to the colossal failure of green energy policies, which have really put countries like Germany in a terrible bind. States within our own country, in California, even Texas is on a knife edge here in terms of the grid collapsing in this hot weather. We got to pursue energy policies that are based on math and science, not on ideology. And nuclear is wonderful because if it's climate change and carbon emissions that's important to you, we do that. We're as clean and carbon-free as wind and solar. But if you're like most of us that want reliable, affordable electricity, nuclear power plants run 24/7. They're baseload power. Through storms, heat waves, polar vortexes, nuclear produces. So the resurgence we're seeing, 60 plus reactors built in the last year, 50 more being built, and now in the United States we're seeing advanced modular reactors. But we do have a Russian reliance on the fuel cycle. We're getting 60% of our uranium from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. And for a country like ours that has 1 billion pounds of known and likely resources of uranium in the Western United States, that's just an unnecessary reliance. It's just like turning our backs on the oil and gas industry is insane in a country that's as blessed with, like ours, with resources. So I think the invasion of Ukraine is causing electric utility companies to rethink buying uranium from countries like China, Russia that don't share our interests, and focusing more on North America, Canada, the United States, Western Europe as our fuel supplies. But nuclear certainly is enjoying a bright renaissance and a very bright future.
I mean, it does have, all right, we can applaud that. Why not? Sure. Some good news for a change.
Yep.
Nuclear does have a bit of a perception issue due to some unfortunate disasters in the past, but it seems as though there are much stricter controls to better regulate that. Talk us through the investment in the sector that we're seeing now and what part of the energy landscape you see nuclear energy filling in the next 10 years or so.
Well, whether it's a move to decarbonize or just have a more diverse, all the above energy strategy, nuclear is fitting in that mix. Even in Europe, where countries like Germany have been very anti-nuclear, we're seeing the rest of the countries throughout Europe and Central and Eastern Europe all embrace nuclear. Last week, the EU, through their taxonomy discussions, named nuclear and natural gas as sustainable green investments. And I know that was difficult for some on the environmental left, but it's the reality. We need all of these energy sources represented on this podium. And in Europe, certainly countries in Central Europe, they have to move away from their coal-fired dependency as being part of the EU, but they can't run into the arms of Putin and buy natural gas. So they're building small modular reactors and large reactors. In the United States, our next wave of reactors are going to be like the TerraPower reactor going into Wyoming, to replace a retiring coal-fired power station in Washington State, Idaho, and throughout the US, Canada, and around the world. These small modular reactors are a real, not the only answer to our energy needs, but an important component.
I'm going to stick with you, Scott, because this goal of net zero emissions by 2050, is that even feasible? Is there enough natural resources, be it uranium to completely take over, be it copper and silver and lithium that's needed for batteries, for solar, for wind? Is there enough of the other resources that would be required to fill up the gap, even if it were possible?
Yeah, I think we have to question, again, net zero by 2030 or 2050 is kind of a slogan that, again, I think we have to be careful. Do we want to be net zero? Maybe it's more important to have a mix of energy. We're blessed in the United States with oil, gas, coal, nuclear, wind, and solar. So maybe we shouldn't go there. Maybe we should, do everything that we do in our operations cleaner, safer,
right.
Respect the environment. But in terms of resources, I think we have a disconnect because California wants to go to electric vehicles by 2035, but can't deliver electricity to homes and businesses in 2022. That's a problem. And the left will also wants electric vehicles, all the technological advances in our society, but they don't want to mine lithium, copper, nickel, uranium, cobalt. So we have to be realistic here. It's almost naive to think that we have an advanced society without producing oil and gas or mining minerals.
Well, John, you made the point last year, and I thought it was quite catchy, that last time you checked, John Deere doesn't make any electric farming vehicles. And we're talking about food shortages with regards to the war in Russia and Ukraine. But so much of our farming sector and agricultural sector relies on oil.
Absolutely. I haven't seen a Tesla tractor in a cornfield or a wheat field lately. They all run on diesel, and diesel has been skyrocketing. And you start pricing the farmers out of being able to fuel their tractors, guess what happens? Unless you have a garden in your backyard and most of us don't have a garden big enough to grow a year's worth of wheat and corn for our families, it just is not sustainable. And when you start pricing these farmers out, you are going to see food shortages. You're going to see poverty. Look at what the exact thing that we're talking about right now is happening in Denmark. It's happening in Sri Lanka. They said no more fertilizer. Well, guess what happens? You don't produce as much food, and now they're revolting. Then that government will probably be overthrown, or if it's not already overthrown. But it's this whole following the green agenda. But yeah, you start pricing the farmers out of being able to run their tractors, and we're all going to be in a hard place to live in. So buy plows and horses and land if that happens. So
right.
I hope it doesn't.
Hopefully we're not in the direction of Sri Lanka and the Netherlands, which
certainly
shows us a pretty bleak picture. But Ron, we do have President Biden now saying that he wants to tax excess profits from big oil companies. He is putting the blame on the greed of big oil and gas companies. There's legislation that's setting a 21% surtax on the excess profits of oil and gas companies with more than $1 billion in annual revenue. And I just want to point out, by the way, that in 2021, U.S. energy firms were the 10th out of 11 most profitable sector in the U.S. economy. So 10 out of 11, that's really not so good. And they posted an 8.3% profit margin in 2021. That's according to S&P Global IQ. And that was below the 10.6%, which was the average of all the other companies. So now they're finally getting a chance to make some profit back. And the Biden administration is considering taxing that. If that legislation were to pass, what impact would that have?
Well, we wouldn't go away because we'll keep doing what we've been doing. A lot of people don't realize this. Every one of us up here are independent oil and gas companies on some level. Well, that accounts for 83% of all the oil and gas in the United States. And we put billions, I mean billions, back into the economy. So I think a lot of things are overlooked. And as Scott said earlier, it seems like math gets thrown out the window as far as basic numbers. But we are the guys and other people like us, whether it's family-owned companies, the ones out there fighting, making a difference. And I think it comes down now to where everyone, you can talk about it or you can get involved and you can do something about it. I think what's great for everyone that's watching and for all investors out there, you can actually invest in something that's going to make you money now and for years to come and help build this independence that we need with energy in our company. Because no matter what happens, whether they tax us or don't tax us, we're not going to stop doing what we're doing. We're going to keep plugging away. We're going to keep plugging away. Yes, will it hurt, but we're not going to stop, because the only way out of this is to get back to the energy independence. That's all there is to it. And so, I put it out there for everyone that's watching, for your next investment, look at energy. It's a good move for everyone and get America back on its feet.
Yeah, that deserves a round of applause, I'd say. Reed, I saw you nodding in agreement. What are some of the solutions that you propose? How can we get back on track, even in the face of, shall we say, hostile policies?
Well, Ron's right. I mean, we have to keep drilling. That's how we get out of this. And the independents are the ones doing that. I mean, our company, Lapetco, from February of last year to now, we've produced a little over 3.8 million barrels of oil and gas equivalent to, go into the U.S. economy. And these fellows do the same thing. And that's what we have to continue doing. And that's where the investment dollars are coming from for the U.S. sector right now.
What about the prospect of a global economic slowdown and a recession that has seen the price of oil come down a little bit? Technically we could be in a recession because it's 2 quarters of negative growth and Q2 looks pretty bleak. But if a recession persists both here in the US and globally, what does that mean for the price of oil in the short term?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is just fear of recession has knocked the price down a little bit. It's not supply and demand. We've not seen that yet. But even if we are in a recession, the demand is still going to be there. The supply is still short in the U.S., so we have to continue doing what we're doing to try and meet that demand.
All right. Ron, I want to throw it to you. Some solutions that you can propose in terms of returning to a form of energy independence that people watching and listening, they feel that it's an issue that hits close to home. Can they do anything to help further the cause?
Write your congressman. Tell them, open up everything. Let us drill. Let us produce. Produce with us. The best way to take the sting out of filling up your gas tank is to own a piece of an oil well. It makes you feel a little bit better. But, and it is not just gasoline that you're helping the country with. 90% of this room would evaporate if you didn't have oil and gas. Your clothes, there's 2,000 different products that are produced from a barrel of oil.
6,000 Reed would like to correct you.
There you go. The 60% of a barrel of oil goes to making other things other than gasoline. So it is in everything that we do, and we use it every single day. So produce more of it, and the world will be a better place. We produce it, like I said earlier, cleaner and better and more efficiently than anywhere else on the planet. And the people that work on these rigs and work on these facilities typically live in the area. They drink the water, they breathe the air. They have firsthand ownership in making sure everything runs very smoothly and very cleanly, as opposed to other parts of the country that Biden wants to go and get the oil from. It's like having kids. You're trying to keep your house cool at 70 degrees and your kids are all opening up the windows in Arizona where it's 120 outside. That's China and India, and you're the one that's footing the bill and following all the rules to make sure your house stays cold. It's ludicrous.
All right, Scott, I'm going to give you the final word here.
Excellent. Well, I think as libertarians, I think we would all agree, just get the government out of our way. We have free market driven companies on the stage here that just want to conduct their businesses, provide energy, and it's not that we're not going to be regulated, but don't over-regulate us to a point where we can't really advance our industry.
Good talking.
So.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Great work, everybody.
Scott,
we're
Ron,
done.
Reed and John, appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Kitco News coverage of Freedom Fest is brought to you by Coin Payments, crypto payments made easy.